the election. Appreciate you coming out. The time for the election is now almost at hand. Commencing tomorrow night, you will make your decision. As you approach that time of decision, there are a few final thoughts which I want to bring to your attention. There are some matters which I have previously mentioned to you that I want to touch briefly and re-emphasize. Mainly, however, I want to bring to your attention some facts which have not been placed before you up to this time, and which is certainly important for you to know before you act upon this matter. First, however, I want to comment on some of the recent letters and leaflets which the union has been distributing to you. In one of these, the union seems to be critical of my bringing you together and talking to you about this matter. They call this gathering a captive audience. Their idea being that you are forced to come here and listen. I want to make it clear that this is not a captive audience. Nobody is required to come and listen to what I have to say. Moreover, I do not ask you to give way to what I have to say, except to the extent that it is reasonable and sensible and rings true to you. I notice that the union makes a great point of the fact that we have company lawyers to furnish guidance to us as to what is legal and proper in such matters as this. Of course we have such legal guidance. With the labor laws as complicated as they are today, any company would be foolish not to obtain clear and legal advice. The union also has its lawyers. The difference is that our company pays its own legal counsel, but the fees to the union's high-priced lawyers comes out of the pocket and paychecks of working people who have to pay the union their money. The union's talk about lawyers is all besides the point. The union has lawyers and we have lawyers. The subject of importance is how you feel that you ought to vote in this election. And in making your decision, you need to hear all the facts about this whole matter. In another leaflet, the union suggests that the only reason the company opposes the union is because the union is good for you. That very statement tells you a great deal about the union. It shows that the union believes that you and the company are always and always should be at odds with each other, and that this company will always oppose whatever is best for you. That is not the true belief of this company. It is not my own true belief. The truth is that all of us who earn our living here at this plant really have the same interest in common. The plain and real truth is that in the long run, this plant cannot succeed, and all of us who are dependent on this plant cannot succeed unless we pull together. The basic aim and purpose of the union is to keep a company and its employees in conflict with each other. The basic premise of a union is to build a barrier between the company and its employees. In the end, that leads to dissension, strife, and serious trouble for everybody concerned. And that is the bedrock reason why I am opposed and why the company is opposed to the union. When Stevens' employees have had full opportunity to consider and study this subject, they have always been able to recognize that this is the truth of the matter. And my sincere belief is that for this fundamental reason, they have always voted to keep the union out. As you know, this textile workers AFL-CIO union which is now trying to get in here, has been putting on a drive at other plants of our companies for many years. Stevens has approximately 80 plants located all the way from New England to Alabama. The organizers for this union have been knocking on the doors of all those plants, all up and down the line for a long, long while. The same organizers who are now working on you people have been all around among Stevens' employees at various places, telling them exactly the same things that they are telling you now, distributing to them the same letters, leaflets, and literature, and making to them the very same promises, word for word, which they are now making to you. But the people have looked them over, studied their records, and turned them down. In no Stevens plant, anywhere, have the people voted for the union. Throughout this company, as soon as the employees have seen and learned the true nature of the union and of unionism, they have voted it down decisively. Incidentally, I understand that you have been told that there is one Stevens plant at which the employees have voted for the union, namely the company's plant in Statesboro, Georgia. Now I want to say to you very clearly and very distinctly, if anybody tells you that the employees at the Stevens plant in Statesboro, Georgia have ever voted for this union or for any union, that person is telling you a flat falsehood. The election in that plant was held approximately 5.5 years ago. This same textile workers, AFL-CIO union, was the union which was involved in that election. The voting was done in an official secret ballot election conducted for the labor board. There were approximately 330 employees at that plant. By a majority of almost 2 to 1, the employees at that plant voted against the union. After that, the union insisted that it was going to represent the employees in that plant, whether they wanted it or not, and no matter that they had voted strongly against it. The legal maneuver by which the union made that insistence was on the basis of the union card which had been signed during the union's campaign. And the litigation about that went on for a long, long time. That is something that this union can hardly be proud of. It ignored the vote of the people and declared that they had to let it represent them whether they wanted it or not. Has the union made known to you the truth that this is what it did to the people in that plant? So there may be no doubt as to what the facts are about this matter, I have here with me an official tally of ballots made for the labor board at the conclusion of that election, and an official certification relating to that election. I will be glad for any of you to inspect these official documents if you wish to do so. This shows you exactly the voting that was at that plant. Incidentally, the formal tally of ballots right here verifying the fact that the union has been decisively defeated in the voting bears the signature for the union of a gentleman whom you now know, Mr. Harold D. McGill. As many of you know, is one of the head men in the union's organizing campaign here. His name's on this document, verifying who won that election. Here for you to see. Now turning to another subject, in one of the union's recent leaflets, they refer to me as sort of a good guy. Brought in here to improve things for a while and then be pulled out and sent somewhere else. That is what the union organizers say simply because it suits them to say it. They, of course, don't have to back up anything and can therefore say whatever they want to say. On the contrary, I am responsible for what I say. And I want you to know that I certainly did not come here upon any such understanding. I came here with the understanding and intention of staying here, living here, and continuing to serve this plan. Since the union is trying to imply that I may not be exactly fair and square with you, I would like to tell you a little something about myself. I came up through the textile plant. Both my parents were weavers in Stevens' plant. I have worked up through many jobs which you are now working. I've been a sweeper, a loom cleaner, a filling hauler, a weaver, a loom fixer, supervisors in many departments. I've gone from the first to the third shift, from the third to the first, all the way up and down the line. Now I know that I can understand your viewpoint because I worked for the years in the job where you are now working. I know the details of what you're doing. There is no pretense about my wanting to see you people treated fairly and my desire to correct and improve things in this plant. And I can tell you further that this is not simply my personal desire and intention. It comes all the way down from the top, the very top management of this company. Now I can tell you who will be moving on and leaving here as soon as they find out that they are not going to be able to come in and collect money from you, and that is these union organizers. They are here today and gone tomorrow. That's the nature of their business. Now they're swarming around, hoping that this election will be cash-in day for them. They are not expecting to get it from the company. They are hoping to get refinanced by you, out of your pocket and your paycheck. The union has spent large sums of money in its many campaigns at Stevens' plant. They are determined that you people at this Waldenburg plant shall be the first to begin to pay them back the money which they have spent so unsuccessfully in their drive against this company. Ask yourself this question. Did the union come in here in your interest, or did it come here in its own interest? That is the question at the bottom of this whole matter. You are people of common sense and good judgment. Do you think that the union organizers heard about you and saw you from somewhere far off and decided all at once that they loved you, and that is why they came here? You know the answer to that. You know that they came here in order to accomplish something for themselves. That is their object, and that is their business. They want to be able to say that although they have failed to get Stevens' employees anywhere else to vote for them, they succeeded in getting you to vote for them, no matter what unfortunate results that may cause from you. Yet elsewhere, they are doing everything they can against your interests. At the same time that they are trying to get lined up to collect dues from you, they are, as I have previously pointed out to you, carrying on a suit against this company for the purpose of wiping out the profits of this company. And that includes wiping out your profit sharing also. As you know, we have been predicting that with this year's good business, your profit sharing was going to be equally good. As we come to this year's end, it is now definitely apparent that this is going to be true. And now the union is suing to take it all away. This union is really in an extraordinary position to be asking for your vote. They ask you to give them your name and your support. They urge you to vote for them and to put yourself and your future and the future of your family into their hands. At the same time, they intend to collect union dues from you, and meanwhile, they sue in court to take all the money that results from the company's profit into their own hands. They would like to fog that subject up. So I noticed that in their last letter to you, they say that they will work out a weekly installment plan for the company to pay the $70 million which they're suing for. And that therefore your profit sharing would not be affected. That statement is so absurd it is silly. If this union succeeds in taking away the profits of this company, which it is certainly trying to do, and is going to do if it possibly can, then your profit sharing would obviously be gone also. For there is no profit sharing except out of company profit. The union knows that. Here's what the union is asking for your vote, your name, and your support, the payment of union dues for you, the wiping out of all profits, including what will be this year's substantial profit sharing for you, and on top of all that, the placing of your future destiny into their hands. All of these things which they now expect from you and would be demanding from you if they get in here, the most dangerous, it seems to me, is trusting in your future to them. This textile workers, AFL-CIO union, can take you down a road that you will not want to travel. The road of strife, long and bitter and violent strife. That has been the record in many places, and that is undeniable. I don't need to stress to you the trouble and the tension, the strain, the strife and the tension that comes with strife. You have heard and read all about that many, many times. Some of you have seen it in your own experience, and you know that it is the truth. You should by all means remember that when a union calls people out on strike in order to force a company to agree to what the union wants, it is definitely the right of the company to fill the jobs of those who see fit to go out on strike. And those whose jobs are filled while they are out on such a strike will have no right automatically to return to their jobs after that, or get their jobs back, even when the strike is ended. I want to repeat that statement to you so that it will be clear and so that there will be no doubt about it in the minds of anybody. Those whose jobs are filled while they are out on such a strike have no right automatically to return to their jobs after that, or get their jobs back even when the strike has ended. There are many clear and plain examples of this sort of thing, not only all over this country, but right here in our own state. Many of these I enumerated to you when I last talked to you, and I will not take time to repeat them to you again. What you need to remember is that the union which carried on those bitter strikes and those violent strikes is the same union which is now asking you to bring it in here and follow where it leads. It is the same union which is asking you, commencing tomorrow, to place yourself into its hands. Recently, this union distributed to you a multicolored leaflet. I have one of those leaflets in my hand. I am going to read to you from the pink sheet in this leaflet. Just think, why would any union desire violence? There's all kinds of violence in the world, but only a fool would try to pin it on a union. TWA is opposed to violence of any kind. Violence during a strike does not help the union. That's obvious. Any person who encourages violence will not be tolerated in the TWA. Now that is truly a most extraordinary statement. Is this union trying to claim that it has never had anything to do with all of the violence that has occurred in the numerous strikes which it has conducted. The leaflet said that only a fool would try to pin it on the Union. Well, the most recent example of violence being pinned on the Union, unlawful and extreme violence, is the case which I have told you about at the Kaiser Ross textile plant over in Dayton, Tennessee. There I have already appointed out to you the United States District Court after a lengthy trial and after hearing many witnesses from both sides made a strong ruling against this Union. That ruling has now been upheld by the United States Court of Appeals. The Union tried to get the Supreme Court to change the ruling, and the Supreme Court declined to do so. Here is what the Court of Appeals said about this Union in that case, and I quote the Court's exact words. The involvement of the Union in the violent and unlawful damage-causing activities during the strike is demonstrated most clearly by the actions of its international representatives. During the course of the strike, these Union officials personally participated in, observed, supervised, and controlled the activities of the strike. The official findings of the court were that these Union officials had instructed the strikers to stop employees from entering the plant by any means they could, including stripping of clothes, and that during the period numerous acts of extreme violence occurred as the strikers blocked, stoned, and in some cases overturned vehicles carrying employees attempting to enter or leave the plant. As I pointed out when I last talked to you, the court quoted from the Union's own widely distributed publication in which the Union boasted that the Dayton plant was shut down as completely if it had been struck by a plane. The court concluded that the Union, through its highest-ranking officers, conducted, encouraged, authorized, and participated in acts of violence. This very Union, which is now asking you to bring it in here, was found to be guilty of violence in that strike to the extent that the court imposed, as I have told you, a verdict and judgment that the Union must pay out of its own funds approximately $1.25 million. Anybody who is involved in violence to the tune of $1.25 million is pretty well involved in violence, it would seem to me. I have here in my hand a copy of the decision and judgment of the United States Court of Appeals, if anyone wants to see it. This tells you everything that I have just said. I'd be most happy if any of you come see it. Yet this Union solemnly says to you and asks you to believe that only a fool would try to pin violence on the Union. The United States Court certainly pinned it on the Union. So the Union seems to be saying that the courts are fools. And where will the Union get the money to pay the $1.25 million which the court's final decision now orders the Union to pay? There is only one source from which they can get it, from the pockets and paychecks of working people. They would like to have you and their union just in time to see how much they can collect from you to help pay that verdict of $1.25 million, which they definitely are now going to have to pay. I have here in my hand another copy of a court decision in which the Supreme Court of North Carolina upheld the criminal conviction of the textile workers, AFL, CIO officials who were in charge of this union strike at the Harry Henderson Mill up in Henderson, North Carolina. Those officials served terms in the North Carolina State Penitentiary for violence that occurred in that strike, and which they were found to have planned and promoted. I have here also in my hand a copy of a declaration signed by more than 1,000 citizens of the town of Henderson and county of Vance, North Carolina, relating to the violence which took place in that strike. During that strike, the citizens of that town and county made this statement, and I quote, people see this. To the public officials and to the governor of our state and to the law enforcement officers who have sought to maintain law and order in our community during this difficult time, we are grateful. But the law and order are not yet being fully maintained. Homes and automobiles have been dynamited. Rocks and stones are thrown through windows. People sleep beside their shotguns. Threats and intimidation fill the air. The atmosphere is that of tension and fear. In many homes, it mounts to hysteria and terror. The safety of life and property hang in balance, to say nothing of the good name and reputation of our town and community. That strike was carried on by this very same Textile Workers AFL-CIO union, which is now solemnly declaring to you that only a fool would try to pin violence on this union. That TWUA is opposed to violence of any kind, and that any person who encourages violence will not be tolerated in the TWUA. One thing is sure, nobody can vote for this union on the ground that he believes what the union leads to say. You can only vote for it on the basis that you don't care whether it tells you the truth or not. Don't overlook the fact that this union, now trying to make you believe that it has your interest at heart, is the same union that tried to persuade the American public not to buy any of the products which you make. In national advertising, it urged people not to buy Stevens products. Thereby, it sought to kill your job and put you out of work. Yet here it is now, telling you that it is deeply concerned for your welfare and trying to persuade you to embrace it and vote for it and bring it in here and begin paying your money to it. But regardless of all these facts, people do sometimes have the idea that the thing to do is vote for a union and bring it in and then stand aside and see how it works and what happens. Their thought seems to be that they have nothing to lose by bringing it in and that they might get something for nothing. Is that true? If the union were voted in, could you stand aside and remain unaffected by it? Is it true that you would have nothing to lose if the union did come in? Consider these facts. In the first place, if a majority were to vote for the union, then it would, by law, represent and be the agent for not only those who voted for it, it would then automatically and by law be the agent for everybody in the plant. And everybody would be bound by what it said and did, whether they wanted to be bound by it or not. At that point, the right and freedom of each employee to come in and settle matters personally would be gone. Every employee's affairs would then be handled by the persons who got themselves appointed as shop stewards and committeemen in the union. Everybody who values his individual independence and freedom should think about this. Can the union call a strike even though you don't want it? The answer is that it certainly can. 20 or 25 people or any small number can gather at a union meeting and vote for a strike. And that would be an officially called strike of all employees here at this plant. There is no law and no restriction that prevents that from happening this way. And in fact, that is the way the union strikes usually are called. In its recent leaflet of many colors, which I have already quoted to you, the union makes this statement, and I again quote their exact words. Before any strike action is taken, all workers vote by secret ballot on whether to strike. Unless the decision to strike is unanimous, the strike action is not taken. In their latest letter to you, the union again specifically declares
that employees need never have a strike against their will. These statements are totally absurd. The undeniable truth, on the contrary, is that thousands upon thousands of people working in unionized plants have been taken out on strike for their union without voting to strike and without wanting to strike and strictly against their will. And although workers certainly had not voted to strike and without the decision to strike being unanimous in any way, shape, or form. Now this is a very vital aspect of this whole matter. You need to know how strikes can get going and how strikes do get going. And this union has definitely tried to mislead you on this fundamental subject. Further, you need to think about this. If the union were voted in and then started a strike, could you stand aside and remain unaffected for that strike? Do you at that point stand to lose nothing by what the union is doing, or do you stand to lose everything? The answer is that if you try to come to work through the union picket line, you may be in for some very unpleasant experience, and violence and threats of violence both at work and at your home. On the other hand, if you do not come to work in the face of a strike, you lose your pay and you will draw no unemployment pay. Furthermore, if someone else is put on your job, you may have lost it permanently. Certainly then, it is most emphatically not true that if this union comes in, you can always stand aside, unaffected, and with nothing to lose. Everything you have may be at stake as you decide whether you will vote for this union or against it in this election. Now the organizers try to sell you the idea that if you were to vote this union in, you would be the union, you would control it and run it. Let me show you how untrue that is. I have studied the Constitution and bylaws of this union, the Textile Workers AFL-CIO Union. In Article 9, Section 8 of its Constitution, this union says that all books, records, funds, and property in the possession of are subject to the control of any local union shall be and remain the property of the International Union. The union tells you that you will be the union, but when you read their Constitution and bylaws, you find the International Union absolutely owns all the funds, the money, the property, and everything else in the possession of the local union. Even the local union, books and records. Everything that employees put into a local union and everything they acquire for their local union becomes and is completely the property of the International Union. Instead of you being the union, it is obvious that you, the local union, would be owned lock, stock, and barrel by the International Union. With regard to strike, Article 17 of the Union's Constitution and bylaws states that the General President of the Union and he alone may declare any strike terminated. In other words, if you were in a union and a strike were called here, it would not be within your authority to end the strike. The General President of the Union and he alone would be the person with the authority to end the strike. If the organizers try to lead you to believe that the union would not dictate to you what to do and what not to do, the plain and simple and undeniable truth is that under the Constitution of the Union, that is exactly what the union would do, dictate to you and control you. Now the other things which people often overlook about unions, it is a fact that a union, wherever it comes in, necessarily and automatically takes away from people many of their individual rights and liberties. When a union comes in, the employees in that operation become subject to various restrictions and limitations, which unionism imposes as a matter of law. And as a result, you see union members being fined and punished by the union for things which used to be matters of individual choice and decisions by each person for himself. Union members have recently been fined $500 each because they wouldn't walk a picket line during a strike. Other union members have been fined $100 each because they did more work than the union thought they ought to, or because they worked overtime when the unions didn't want them to do so. Among the very latest cases, there are some in which unions have fined their members hundreds of dollars each because they worked overtime when the union told them not to do so, and because they chose to come to work when the union wanted them to strike. There is still another case in which a union member was fined by a union for going to church instead of attending a union meeting. There are still other cases in which the union members decided, after having a union for a while, that they didn't want it any longer, and they asked the labor board to come and hold another election to see whether the union should stay in or be voted out. On this account, they were fined several $100s each by the union. Having once voted the union in, they found that they were locked in. The union organizers don't tell you about that, do they? In one of the recorded messages, which the union organizers have recently been putting out over the telephone, they say that they are here to achieve for you a better way of life. When a union achieves the kind of power that I have just been describing to you, for whom is it a better way of life? It may be desired by the union that holds and wields such power, but it is surely not a better way of life for those who must live under it. Keep those thoughts in mind as you make your decision on this matter. You now have freedom, which people who are under unions do not have. No union takes any money out of your paycheck. No union tells you when you will work and when you won't work. No union controls your decisions, nor dictates to you what your course of action shall be. Now, I want to emphasize to you once again that although some of you may have signed union cards at one time or another, that has no bearing upon your right to vote as you now see fit in this election. You should vote as you believe to be wise and best in the light of the whole matter as you now see it. You are completely free to vote against the union, regardless of the fact that at some time or other you may have signed a union card. This matter, as you are well aware, has been hanging over us all for a long while. Here we are at Thanksgiving, and Christmas is just ahead. The decision is now to be made, and your answer is now to be given. Remember that you cannot stand aside on the idea that the outcome of this election won't affect you. It will affect you. Therefore, you should by all means help it go the way you want it to go. Otherwise, you may find yourself saddled with a union you do not want. By all means, vote in this election. Weigh all these matters carefully, then make up your mind and vote. Vote as you believe will be the best for your future and the future of your family, best for the peace and welfare of yourself and of those who are dependent upon you. Don't fail to vote. I thank you for your attention. Please will now. Thank you.
I understand that they talked to you for about 17 minutes, sometimes this afternoon, and I'm allowed 17 minutes. First of all, let me just say that even though I was up most of all night last night, that I feel pretty good. I really enjoyed coming in here and meeting with you people. And I think that we've made a lot of friends. And I'm glad to see that you came out here tonight to hear probably what will be, if you want to call it a speech, the last speech, at least inside the plant, before you vote on Wednesday. Now, I'd much rather be sharing this podium with Mr. Walker or somebody else. As you know, the last meeting we had, I think most of you indicated, or held up your hands, I know they did on the first shift, every one of them on the first shift, said that they love to see a debate of some sort between a company official and a union official, and also both of us try to answer your questions. Now, I assume if they answered your questions today, they'll have done it, huh? All right. Let me just rush on through this thing. Maybe I'll save a minute or two, and I'll try to answer your questions again if I possibly can. Number one, I think it may have mentioned to you tension. All the pressure's been put on you. Well, I ask you, I think you know who's been trying to apply that pressure. But it's also my understanding that Mr. Walker admitted in front of all of you today that he wouldn't close the plant down if you voted the union in, or because you voted the union in. Did he or did he not? Well, I don't know where they put all these merchants and all these people been patting on the back, not bosses, but people that want to be bosses, what they've been telling all over town, grocery stores and everywhere else, that if you voted the union in, the plant would be closed up. So I'm glad that Mr. Walker finally cleared that up for you. There's some other things I'm sure that he probably talked to you about. He said that a lot of things are happening that were not happening before the union come around. And I couldn't agree with him more. I think for the first time that you've learned a little bit about your company and a little bit about the conditions of union people and the wages that they make. And I would agree that a lot of things are happening that have been happening in the past. I think if you're wise enough to see through it. As I said earlier, there's no way under the sun that I can answer all the rumors or everything that's going to be brought out and said during the course of this campaign. But I come in here with an open mind and an open heart, and I'll try to answer your questions and tell you the truth. Now, where I come from, down in South Georgia, I went into my background in earlier meetings. My father raised me to tell the truth. And he told me if it ever got down to the point where there's a question whether I'm telling the truth or somebody else is telling the truth, put one little money where your mouth is. And I think that I've done that. I'm sure you got a copy of the letter that Mr. Walker received. Finally had to get the postmaster to deliver it to his house. We put the letter in the mail on Friday night, and somehow or another they didn't get out of the post office on Friday morning. And some of you got them, and some of you didn't. Therefore, we reproduced this passage out at your gate. But what have they been talking about? They asked us to put something in writing about a boycott. I don't know how he tried to cover it up, but he's been saying, he's been banging on the table, letting them know that they were planning a boycott. Well, we offered a $1,000 reward if they could prove that. He also said, I think several times, that they can call you out on strike. We also put out a $1,000 reward on that, and you got a copy of it. And under the law, the employees can vote for the union and never pay one dime in union dues against their will. Under the law, the employees can vote for the union and never have a strike against their will. And they put the bit in there about the boycott also. I don't know how you try to cover that up. And let me just say that I don't intend to hit anybody in the head with an axe. I don't know if he said anything like that or not. I think if most of you would realize that's been at least a bit acquainted with me, that we're not that type of people. As far as Kaiser Law over in Dayton, Tennessee, I've never even been into Dayton, Tennessee. And I don't know a lot about Kaiser Law, but I do know a little bit. And they get up here, and they probably quote it to you from one court decision. One court decision. This union of textile workers may have paid out some money. Let me just point this out to you. Everybody is an individual, and you can't control each individual. And maybe the textile workers somewhere along the line and some of the staff that they hired, they made some mistakes. But I can assure you that this company has made a lot of mistakes in the supervisors that they've hired. So they get up and talk about one court decision. When they've been found guilty 14 times by the National Labor Relations Board, 9 times by the Circuit Court of Appeals, 3 of them went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. They've been tried for contempt several times. Now they talk about one court decision. Now I don't know how they could be in a position to talk about one little court decision when they've been found guilty of all these things. Nevertheless, I guess it is. Still trying to frighten me by talking about replacing you while you're on strike. And I'm thinking, I put out a leaflet here in the meeting, and I read from a book that said, and I'll read it again if anybody wants it, employees who strike, who protest an unfair labor practice strike committed by the employer are called unfair labor practice strikers. Such strikers can neither be discharged nor permanently replaced when the strike ends. An unfair labor practice striker, absent serious misconduct on his part, is entitled to his job back, even if an employee hired to do his work has to be discharged. I did not pass that out to y'all at the meeting. Now he comes back, he don't tell you the difference between the various type strikes. So let me just move on down the line to tell you just a little something. First of all, you heard me say that you have basically good supervision, and I don't have anything against Mr. Walker or any of the other supervisors out here. But I have told you that this high-priced lawyer in New York been writing speeches, not in New York, in Charlotte, North Carolina, but these high-priced, not high-priced, but big-salaried people and big shots up in New York are the ones that are dictating to this lawyer and the lawyer at your company, officials here, on how to keep the union up. Now let me just point out a few things. James D. Finley, he's chairman of the board of directors and chief executive officer of JP Steel. And this is the year of 1973. James D. Finley's salary was $166,667. In incentive compensation, he got another $113,200. And under this salaried employee saving investment profit sharing plan, he got another $10,008. All total, average remuneration, all total, he received $289,875. That's one man. I can move on down the line and show you that Mr. Harrell received $177,300. But going all the way down, 33 people, 35 people, you ought to make it out, but I'll show it to you. I think it's 35 people, all told, received $2,997,497. And that's 35 people on the board of directors, JPC. If anybody wants to see this, I'll be glad to show it to you. And that's what I've been talking about when I say that they've been raising the cows in the South and milking them in New York. And I think you want them to leave a little bit of that milk down here in Wallace, North Carolina. And that's when I say, when I say money is a part of it, but it's your money. You help make it. You're the one that made these people rich up in New York. And I think you're entitled to a lot more than what you're receiving out of it, and I'm sure that you'll agree with that. Now, there's just a few other things I want to move on down the line and try to pass on to you. There's a netting plant, a union netting plant similar to yours. And before the election's over with, we're going to put these rates out from this union knitting plant. I got one right in front of me here where it shows a knitter makes $4.20 an hour. Now, how many, what does a knitter make here? Anywhere around $4.20 an hour? Let me just move on down the line. There's a lot of other things, but you'll get a copy of this leaflet I got it here in my hand. Holidays, 11 paid holidays. If you get 5 paid holidays, the way I understand it. If you're out sick, they get up to $70 a week, 26 weeks. They got a good hospitalization plan, fully paid for by the company. They got a good vacation plan. On the second shift, they get 10 cents an hour more. On the third shift, they get 15 cents an hour more. So I hope you'll look at that leaflet and read it before you vote next week. Now, I don't know how many of you saw the Wilmington leaflet that we put out. I'm sure you did, and I hope that you read it. But it also had several union plants down in Wilmington in that leaflet. One of them happened to be the Timmins plant, which is represented by the Textile Workers Union. And their wages and benefits are a lot better than yours. And I hope you read that. Now, I don't know how you might have tried to cover that up. Somebody said he said something about Timmy had a plant up north somewhere that closed down. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, because I hadn't had an opportunity to check it out. But I'm glad to see that some of these companies are coming down south, and I'm glad to see we're getting unions into them so the people down here can earn a decent standard of living. Just think about that $1.17 an hour difference between North Carolina state average and the national factor average. How much does that amount to? $1.17 an hour. Well, that's enough for you to send your kids to college on, at least one of them, or maybe enough to buy a new automobile be free every year. So let me just move on down the line and talk about a few other things. I don't think he told you that they made $39 million last year. We told you that about 9 times. They haven't denied it. That was the end of 1974. There'll be another stockholders report out sometime around the 1st of March. We'll find out what they made, what they pay these people then, since 1973. But don't make any mistakes about it, brothers and sisters. It's not me, Harold McGill, that they're fighting. I'm paid by the United Steelworkers of America. As I told you before, my wages are not going to increase or decrease whether you vote in favor of the union or whether you vote against the union. It's yours they're fighting. You're the one that's out there running those machines. And for the first time, after 11 years that we've been trying to assist you, trying to assist Stevens workers all over, the bosses are more afraid than you are. I think that all of you that's out there wearing T-shirts or buttons have more job security than anybody else in this plant. These people are running around here telling you all kind of bad things that's going to happen. If something happens to them, there ain't nothing I can do about it. And he might have made a statement like, if there's anybody that was for the union, and now has changed your mind and come over to the countryside, that you don't have to have anything to worry about. So let me just say, I told you about a fellow over here in the Holly plant that they sent home, and I was able to prove that the company here, he signed a union card, and I was able to, after talking to other witnesses, I didn't think he was guilty of what they accused him of, so I told him to go back and see his boss and tell him that Harold McGill would send him over there And if he didn't put him back to work, then we can go process the necessary charges. So you do have some job security for supporting the union. But if these people have been going down here bird hunting with the bosses and other things, if they fire them, there ain't nothing I can do for them. You follow me? So there's no way in the world that I can prove that he supports the union. I don't think he is. There's a lot of other people that's been running around all over, telling you all kind of wild tales. They hope to get something out of it. They hope to get something off of you before it's over with. So let me stop right here, and I've got about 3 or 4 minutes to just see if anybody's got any questions, and I'll try to cap it off. Lock it to me.
Yeah, has anybody picked up that $1,000 check?
No, sir, nobody's come around for the $1,000 yet. It looks to me like if I've been lying to you, they would do it. Yes, ma'am. Speak up. I don't have long. Right. Any other questions while I'm out here? I think you heard it. That's also in that reward number 2. Under the law, the employees can vote for the union and never pay one dime in union dues against their will. That's right.
On that letter it said this morning that the Brad was coming out yesterday, he stated in a sense they were telling a story about what they said yesterday.
All right, you're talking about Roanoke Rapid working. There's been a lot of talk about how much time they're working. Now, I've got right in front of me here. Here's one checked up 40 hours, and that's for January 11th. There's a more recent one. Here's one for 39 hours. 2/175. Here's 41 and a half hours. 1/1875. And here's 164 hours. 2/875. And I'll pass this around so everybody can see it.
I'd like to know if the union comes in this plant for my job being changed to electrician.
No, sir. You're going to set up your own rules and your own seniority system. And nobody's going to take anybody else's job. If somebody's got ahead of you already, then there's nothing we can do about that. Your seniority, of course, would be credited to you from the time you went to work here, but we cannot go back and correct all the problems you've had prior to that time. So nobody's job is going to be taken away from them. Anything else? You have to treat everybody equal. Here comes Jack, and I think I got about 2 more minutes. I'll ask you questions tonight, brother. I got about 2 minutes, Jack. Got 1 minute. Well, let me just say, brothers and sisters, it's been a pleasure coming in here again. And I think if you want a better way of life, I think if you want more money, I think if you want more paid holidays, and I think if you're going to take advantage of this opportunity to win and vote yes. What time is it? Yeah! Let's go to Boston, get out and hold that. What time is it? I'll see you at the vote count.